A glimmer of hope amid the tragedy of Italy's earthquake. A 10-year-old girl is rescued from the rubble after 17 hours, but it only eases the agony. The death toll is now approaching 250. Also this lunchtime, the young men who drowned at Camber Sands are thought to have been friends on a day trip, unaware of the fierce dangers they faced. Plus...
Oh my God! Oh my God, I've got an A. What?
A dip in top-grade GCSE passes, partly because more were forced to have another go. And we talked to two of the Olympic women who put Team GB hockey on top of the world.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Alistair Stewart.
Good afternoon. For 36 hours, thousands of rescue workers have searched, listened and dug as they've worked there through the devastation wrought by yesterday's earthquake. So far, they have recovered 247 bodies, many of them children. But there have been moments of much-needed relief too. A 10-year-old girl eased from the debris that had trapped her for 17 hours, alive, shocked but relieved. But these are rare moments amid continuing danger and despair. Hundreds still missing, aftershocks, and on one occasion, a call to clear one rescue area for fear of more buildings collapsing. Neil Connery on the devastation and the scant moments of relief.
More than 24 hours on, the destructive power of this earthquake is becoming clearer. This is what's left of the town of Pescara del Tronto. Rescue crews picking their way through the mountain of rubble. Here, one shouts, "There's a child," and calls for silence. They carefully move the debris surrounding the legs of a girl they believe is called Giulia. With words of reassurance, they delicately begin to inch her out from the tomb of rubble she's been trapped in for 15 hours. At last, the 10-year-old is pulled out alive. A moment of hope which inspires the rescue teams to carry on their efforts with renewed vigour. But the contrast with the cries of despair as the death toll rises couldn't be greater. Aid is reaching the affected areas. There's no shortage of demand for it. The authorities are doing their best to coordinate the supplies, but they've come in for criticism from some survivors for failing to respond quickly enough. There are nearly 5,000 rescue workers trying to help whoever needs it, but the scale of the challenge they now face is clear to see. Neil Connery, ITV News.
Well, Emma Murphy is in Italy, and we can join her live now in the village of Pescara del Tronto, where that little girl was rescued. Emma, is there any hope left of finding others still alive?
I think there probably is a glimmer of hope, but it is hope in the face of the facts, which is that they have been bringing bodies out in this small town for most of the morning. And actually that lovely story that we heard there about the little girl who was rescued yesterday, it has its own tragedy. Not only had she been in that situation, but when she was removed, they also found the body of her younger sister. One of the firefighters telling me that she was cradling her at the time. As they moved her away, they realised that that little girl had died. So it is incredibly difficult for those who are working here. They have those moments of joy, but then they have the utter desperation of having to remove children's bodies from the rubble. And the reason that death toll jumped so significantly overnight is because many of the bodies are brought into these villages and kept here during the day, and then in the evenings they're taken to the mortuaries where they are formally counted, and that's why the figure is likely to go up again this evening.
Emma, thank you. And apologies, there was some picture interference there, I'm sure you'll understand. Emma and her team are working in difficult circumstances. Here, police have confirmed that 5 men, who all died at a popular beach in East Sussex, had travelled from Greater London to Camber Sands. The men, all in their late teens or early 20s, lost their lives yesterday. 3 were pulled from the water and the bodies of 2 of the men were found last night. Well, Sejal Carrier is at Camber Sands live for us this lunchtime with the latest. Sejal.
Yes, Alistair, all the men were Sri Lankan. That's what we now know. And they had all come together for a day out on the beach when police believe they got caught up in strong currents in the water. I also understand that at least 3 of the men worked for the same company in London. They had travelled 75 miles here by car for a seaside trip, but they never made it home. There was little evidence this morning of the tragedy on Camber Sands yesterday, where 5 young men lost their lives. Families with young children were still enjoying a day on the beach and still swimming in the sea. There are signs here warning of the dangers, but few could resist the beguiling sea on a hot summer's day. James Hyatt has been running a cafe here for more than 30 years and knows the risks.
If you look out to sea there now, you'll see there's gullies that run out there, and that makes a difference of 2 or 3 feet. And if you're the other side of that and you've got an incoming tide, when you want to come back, you may be in 4 foot of water, but then all of a sudden you're in 7 foot. And if you're only 6'2" or 5'8", your head's going to go below it.
The contrast to last night's activity here could not be more stark, when emergency teams were called to recover 2 more bodies that had washed up on shore after 3 had been found earlier. Nicola was on the beach at the time with her children and told me what she saw.
Man laying down in blue shorts. I just got a glimpse and walked back because I couldn't take it in. My stomach turned. I feel for the family. I feel for the people that have lost their lives.
The police warned again of the risks of the strong current in the water, which they believe led to these young men's deaths. A petition has been launched to campaign for a permanent lifeguard to be stationed here, but no lifeguards were here on the beach today.
Sejal, apart from that, there's been a worrying series of episodes like this in Scotland, in the West Country, and as you've just been reporting there on the South Coast. What is the advice from the authorities to folk who still want to go and enjoy the beaches and the sun?
Yes, Alistair, there were 5 deaths here, 7 around Britain's coastlines in the last week, making 12 deaths in total. The advice really from the authorities here is that although the sea looks calm and serene, there are hidden dangers. The advice is don't take risks and respect the water and don't go too far out into the water either.
Sejal, thank you. A 29-year-old man from France has been charged with the murder of a British backpacker in Australia. Samail Ayed is accused of stabbing 21-year-old Maya Elif Chung from Derbyshire at a hostel in Queensland on Tuesday. Police are investigating whether he had a romantic interest or obsession with her. A British man who tried to save her is still in a critical condition in hospital. And here, the serial killer Peter Sutcliffe has been sent back to prison after 32 years in Broadmoor Psychiatric Hospital. Sutcliffe, known as the Yorkshire Ripper, was diagnosed with schizophrenia in 1984, but a tribunal has decided he no longer needs treatment for any mental disorder. A&E services for children at a hospital in Stafford have been suspended for being unsafe. The NHS trust that runs County Hospital brought in the measures this morning, blaming a lack of professionally trained and experienced staff. The temporary changes will not affect A&E for adults. Well, Callum Watkinson is live there for us now. Callum, these are serious measures. What precisely has forced this action?
Well, this hospital has been completely rebranded and renamed in the light of the Stafford Hospital scandal, during which hundreds of people were judged to have died unnecessarily here because of substandard care. And the Children's Emergency Centre within A&E was set up as part of the ongoing integration between a number of NHS trusts here in Stafford in the wake of that scandal. Now, this development today, even though it's only been open for a year, is essentially a staffing issue. Senior doctors have looked at the levels of staffing within A&E and the skills of those staff, and they've concluded that they're simply not sufficient to provide safe care for children presenting with serious injury or illness. They've raised particular concerns about paediatric training and anaesthetic training, and about key competencies such as resuscitation and life support. So as of today, the Trust says ambulances will still take children to the most appropriate hospital to treat them. But as of today, Alistair, that appropriate hospital will not be this one here in Stafford.
Callum, thank you. GCSE results have fallen significantly this year, with the number of pupils getting a C or above at its lowest level in nearly 10 years. The fall's partly linked to 17-year-olds now being made to resit last year's exams if their English and maths were not up to standard. Once again, girls have done better than boys, with the gender gap at its widest since 2002. Nick Wallace now on the pupils celebrating or commiserating across the country.
I can't beat.
They're here at last.
I've got an A.
What?
Melody.
What? For what?
I've got an A in English.
Waves of nerves, relief, disappointment and delight have been sweeping through school halls and homes across the country as the nation's 16-year-olds see their years of learning crystallised on one small sheet of paper.
I'm not 100% happy, but I've got an A, so that's something.
I did better than I was expecting, and I'm very satisfied because I got the grades to get into sixth form.
There was particular delight for one young lady from Newcastle who came to this country with her family as a Syrian refugee.
I did very well in Arabic. I got an A star. Also other subjects, it's very good, but not as I want.
The number of students getting C grades or above has fallen to 66.9%, 2% lower than last year, and now at its lowest level for 10 years. Results for maths and English were even worse. Nationally, girls continue to outperform boys, 71% getting C grades or higher compared to 62% of boys. And while the overall number of GCSEs taken held steady, there were some big swings in individual subjects, with computing increasing its number of entrants by 76%. Today, the government admitted its compulsory resit policy was part of the reason why grades were down.
There are far more people now retaking their maths and English GCSE after the age of 16, and that's a welcome change. We want to improve the job prospects, the earning capacity of young people.
Next year, letter grades disappear, with number grades taking their place. One thing that won't change is that rush of results day emotion. Nick Wallace, ITV News.
And if you've had your results today and are wondering what options are available to you, there is advice available at itv.com/news. Still to come this lunchtime, Trump and Farage on stage together. The man who wants to be president recruits Mr. Brexit to talk tough. And the gold medal hockey players, two of them are in the building and ready to talk to me live. But first, net migration to the UK has dipped slightly in the past year, but still remains at near record levels. The latest figures show 327,000 more people entered the country than left it in the year ending in March. That is more than 3 times the official government target. Well, today, the immigration minister didn't rule out introducing work permits for low-skilled workers to try and cut the level of migration from the EU. Our political correspondent Paul Brand is live for us in Westminster. So, first and foremost, yet again, the government misses that key target.
Yeah, Alistair, this is fast becoming the most predictable story in politics. You can pretty much bank on the government missing this immigration target now. It had promised to reduce net migration to the tens of thousands, but yet again today, as you say, it is at 3 times more than that and flatlining too. Some interesting details in these figures too. The number coming from Bulgaria and Romania is now at a record high of 61,000, though the number coming from EU countries which joined before 2004 has actually fallen slightly by 11,000 down to 40,000. The number coming from the rest of the EU pretty much the same at 78,000. Now, the important thing to remember about these figures is they were compiled before we voted to leave the EU. And interestingly, for the first time today, the government seems to be using Brexit as an argument to say, look, have patience here. Finally, we have the levers to potentially control immigration, like, for example, this idea of using work permits to limit the number of unskilled workers coming to the UK. The Immigration Minister didn't deny to me earlier that that could be an option.
I think, we haven't yet come to a settled position exactly where we would be in terms of negotiations, but we're looking at all options. And as a newly appointed Immigration Minister, I'm keen to engage with as many people as possible who may have opportunities, ideas and opportunities. Indeed, the Prime Minister has already been around many of the capitals of Europe, starting to sort of talk.
So the problem for the government here, though, is if they want to try and control freedom of movement, there's no guarantee the UK will get access to the single market. So by focusing in on one target, everything else might be blown off course, like, for example, having a strong economy.
Paul, thank you. The former UKIP leader Nigel Farage has lent his support to the controversial Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump. Speaking at a party rally in Mississippi, Mr. Farage drew cheers from the crowd when he said he wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton even if you paid me. Earlier, Mr. Trump had introduced Mr. Farage as the man behind Brexit, who'd won against the odds. Our correspondent Penny Marshall was there.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Nigel Farage.
The Republicans have a new headline act, someone Trump sees as a global champion of the underdog. Here to tell the losing side in America about how he won against the odds in Britain.
We made June the 23rd our Independence Day when we smashed the establishment.
And Britain's Mr. Brexit gave this Mississippi Trump crowd exactly what they wanted to hear.
If I was an American citizen, I wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton if you paid me. In fact, I wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton if she paid me.
And as well as support, Nigel Farage had advice.
If you want change in this country, you better get your walking boots on. You better get out there campaigning. And remember, anything is possible if enough decent people are prepared to stand up against the establishment.
Nigel Farage has come here to boost the Trump campaign with his tale of anti-establishment victory for the people. And he says there are parallels. The pollsters and the pundits can be wrong.
Donald Trump also sees parallels, believing lessons can be learned from Brexit.
The multinational banks, the media celebrities, the big donors tried to scare the British people out of voting for change. The same thing is happening right here in the United States. It's happening.
This Englishman abroad has won new friends in the Republican Deep South.
It was very interesting, and I like him. Maybe he can move to America. We'd love to have him in the Senate or even in our Congress.
I think it was noble and honorable of y'all, and I really hope we follow through. He was awesome. Y'all should be proud of him.
But is Nigel Farage proud to be seen supporting a man whose views have offended so many?
I've seen some of the things that he said earlier in the campaign. I thought, I really looked very sideways at some of those comments.
Which one?
The ones directed at women and some of the sort of total blanket comments that we saw about Muslim people, for example. But there was nothing he said tonight that people could find to be offensive in any way at all.
Nigel Farage's impact on UK politics is part of history.
Thanks ever so much.
Despite a bravado performance here, he remains a footnote in this divisive American campaign. Penny Marshall, ITV News, Mississippi.
Finally, when you think about your favourite moment from the Rio Olympics, you would be hard-pushed not to include the women's hockey gold in your shortlist. It was a nail-biting final against the Netherlands, with Team GB coming back from behind twice. But in the end, it was a dramatic penalty shootout that secured gold for GB. For the first time, the women's hockey team reached an Olympic final, so a huge moment in sporting history too. I am pleased to say that two of them are with me live. Krista Cullen on the left of your screen and Laura Unsworth. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
History, gold, awesome. Did you ever allow yourselves to dream?
Of course, we train every day for this, just to have an opportunity to fight for a gold medal. And it all sort of fell into place so lovely in Rio. And thankfully, when we met the Dutch in the final, a tough-fought game, but we came up with the gold.
Nerve-wracking being the Dutch. I mean, world champs, and what a heritage.
Yeah, obviously they are the defending Olympic champions, and we knew it was going to be a tough match, but we thought if we could just stay in it, and we knew we would only get maybe a few chances, but our forwards did so well and converted them, and then we get to the shootout, and with Maddie in goal, the best goalkeeper.
She was just extraordinary, wasn't it? I mean, Laura says about a tough game. You have been bished, bashed and boshed more times than I care to think. We got some pictures of it. I mean, you came back from retirement to face that again.
Yes, I know, mad really, but yeah, that's part and parcel of what we do as defenders. Sometimes you have to put your body on the line, and that's what this team was about, putting our bodies on the line and making sure that we did everything we possibly could to make sure we didn't concede.
All that strength, though, available on the flight back. Just a taster first. Now, everyone else I've spoken to say that you were the leading party animals.
We might have been. Yeah, we were the 19...
A very slightly squeaky voice, Laura.
Well, yeah, it was from too much celebrating, I think. But no, definitely, obviously it was nice to celebrate with the whole of Team GB being, the most successful away games, and, we might have had a few drinks here and there.
We've also got a picture of you in Africa, because, of course, you came out of retirement to do this. Extraordinary life, but it just must have been a bit of a risk, and then the ultimate prize for doing it.
Yeah, definitely. At the time, it was sort of one of those, you're risking your pride, get back in. I've got to get myself selected, back in the group. But it's a testimony to the squad that went to Rio, as well as the 31 that train every day. Due to lottery funding, we're able to do that. Brilliant. And fantastic that I was able to make the cut. So hugely privileged and great to be part of Team GB.
Privilege for me to meet both of you. Thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.
And the gold medal winners will be answering your questions live on Facebook in just a few moments' time. The address to take part, facebook.com/ITV News. That is it from me, not from them. I'm back at 6:30. Bye-bye. Fantastic.